So I'd like to tell a story. It's one of the best known stories in the Bible. But sometimes when a story is really well known and you hear it again, your eyes glaze over. So try not to do that. It's a story about a man who asked Jesus, "What must I do to live from this deep, eternal place?" The place that I was describing that Maureen lives from. He said, "What must I do to live fully in a way that makes a lasting impact?" He wasn't asking, how do I get to heaven? He was asking, how do I live from that deep, eternal place right now? And Jesus said, well, what does the Torah say? And the man said, well, it says, love the Lord with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. And Jesus said, you're right. Do that, and you will live. You will live fully. And then the man asked a very important question, which I'm so glad he asked. He said, who exactly is my neighbor? And so Jesus told this story. He said, there was a man traveling a lonely, isolated road who was beaten up, robbed, and left half dead. Now, if Jesus was telling this story today in Seattle, Washington, he might say, there was a man traveling a lonely, isolated road who was beaten up by homelessness, addiction, and other co-occurring disorders. And this man was robbed of a sense of well-being, a sense of belonging. He was robbed of opportunities to heal and to become all that he was created to become. And Jesus might even mention that that homelessness has increased by 21% this year in King County. 21%. And Jesus might even mention that that what used to be 52%, but as of a statistic I read this morning, he might mention that 56% of prisoners in state and federal institutions, prison facilities, suffer from a mental illness. 56%. And the crazy thing is that the average length of stay for a person who is picked up from some inappropriate behavior, not necessarily a crime, but some kind of inappropriate behavior because of their mental illness, is arrested and incarcerated, the average length of stay is 94 days, which cost $30,000. And the crazy thing is that the cost of providing subsidized housing, disability insurance, and mental health treatment for 1 year for an individual is $30,000. It's crazy. We think of ourselves as a progressive state. And in some ways we are, and yet, according to some ratings, we are 47th in the nation in the way we treat people suffering from mental illness. So back to this story. Jesus tells that two people of influence walked by and saw the man who was beaten up, robbed, and half dead. And each of them walked to the other side of the street and walked on by. What we do know about them is that they were people of influence and that they might have used that influence to help change the situation that the man was in. But they had a choice, and they chose to walk on by. And then Jesus tells us that a man came by who was hated by his culture because of his ethnicity and religion. And he saw the man who had been robbed and beaten, and he had compassion for him. And he scooped him up, put him on his donkey, and took him to a place where he could receive the care that he needed. Not the local jail, but to a place where he could receive the care he needed. And the most amazing thing, he was willing to pay for it. The cost is tremendous of not being willing to pay for appropriate care for those suffering from addiction and other mental health challenges. The cost of not being willing to pay is tremendous. Not just in terms of dollars, but in terms of lost lives and lost potential. For example, what if those of you here today, many of you here today, had not been willing to pay for Recovery Cafe to exist? You've paid for this place in generous gifts of time and energy, money, expertise. But what if you had not had compassion? What if you had not made a healing place? What if you had not been willing to pay for it? Well, I can tell you one thing that would not have happened. Tamar, who has a brilliant mind and a creative spirit and a compassionate heart, she would not now be a student at Seattle University. That would be costly. That would be costly. And that is a cost we cannot afford to pay. We cannot afford for any of us not to come off as the people we were created to become. We can't afford for any of us not to become who we were intended to become. And that's why we are here to celebrate today that there is a place, Recovery Cafe, where we can all grow and begin to fulfill our potential. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you all for being a part of this. There is one other part of the story that I don't want to leave out, and that is that that line Jesus spoke to the man when he said, "Do this and you will live." What we know is that when we reach out to offer healing and hope to someone else, what we receive is our own healing and our own hope. What we receive is the gift of really living. So we're all a part of that. Thank you so much. Thank you.